will have the opportunity to view 58 films throughout the weekend, and 8 of those films will be having their world premiere right here in Columbia, Missouri. We've seen a lot of running at this station because riders know if they miss this train, they could be waiting a long time for the next one. Students will be going through a 12-point checklist that'll include fixing seat positions, making sure seat belts work properly, and adjusting mirrors. Representatives and witnesses discussed the issue of transgender women participating in women's sports. The emergency phones along the trail are located at Flat Branch Park and near the MLK Jr. Memorial. They're adding a third one, which will go in by Forum Nature area. So as we learned, both of those taxes did just pass tonight, so they'll go into effect in October. Right now, the Columbia Sports Fieldhouse has 4 courts, but Parks and Rec tells me with 8 courts, it'll be double the fun. And around 30 minutes ago, an officer told me the shooting did involve a minor. And eating disorders jumped over 100%. If you want to get involved, United Way encourages you to call. That phone number should be up on your screen, and you can find it on our website. Live in Jefferson City, Delaney Tarpley, KOMU 8 News. This is Ginger Davis. Police never named a suspect in their investigation, but they tell me advancing technology is allowing them to revisit old cases. Today, I spoke to Linda Carnes, a close acquaintance of Davis, who says she's hopeful they'll finally get justice.
She's just completely a good person.
Nearly 30 years after the suspected murder, Linda Carnes remembers her friend Ginger Davis.
I remember her as a very petite, very sweet woman. She was very friendly and very creative.
But after decades of unanswered questions, Carnes has a new reason to hope the case might finally get stitched together.
Recently, the Columbia Police Department reopened the investigation into the murder of Virginia Davis.
Carnes met Davis through the Boonslick Trail Quilters Guild in the early 90s, but about 2 years later, police found Davis dead in her home on Patsy Lane.
They found her with a plastic bag over her head.
Carnes wonders if the location of that home played a part in what happened.
The speculation among ourselves was that maybe somebody had just come off the highway, because we couldn't imagine anybody who would have any ill feelings towards her.
She also worries what else the suspect could have gotten away with.
Well, it does make you wonder if somebody could do that sort of thing, what else they might have done in those 30 years.
To commemorate Ginger, the Guild purchased a book like this and donated it to the local library in her memory.
I hope that there's still other people who remember Ginger.
Carnes hopes piece by piece.
I hope that justice is done.
Police ask anyone with information related to the case to call their Criminal Investigation Division. That number is over on our website, KOMU.com. In the studio, Delaney Tarpley, KOMU 8 News. This is what's left of the hanging barn in Boonville after a 100-year-old tree fell on it earlier this week. As you can see behind me, you can see exactly where the tree hit. It also fell on the roof as well. And as you may have been thinking because of the name, it actually was a place where a hanging took place. It was actually the location of the very last hanging here in the state of Missouri.
It's just a really sad day.
Crews in Boonville are picking up the pieces.
When we first heard about it, we didn't think that it had been completely destroyed, but looking at it here, standing in the alley, it looks to be that way.
Of a place with a dark history.
It's an historic building, but a building with a mixed legacy.
In the year 1930, 21-year-old Lawrence Mabry was the last man in the state publicly hanged for murder.
You know, it's part of history that you're not always proud of, but it was part of history.
For 12 years, Brent Bozarth has taken care of the barn in the old Cooper County Jail out front. Over the past 4 decades, the 2 buildings have become educational museums.
So this was a place we visited a lot as a kid. You'd take field trips and see the old jail.
We do about probably 100 tours a year.
In all the years of caretaking, Bozarth says he's never seen damage this bad.
The building will have to come down.
But that doesn't mean the memories will fade away.
The thing that would probably make the most sense would just to get a nice plaque, make up a nice plaque with the history of the building and what happened to it.
To Bozarth, even with the building gone, they can't take away the history of what happened there.
There's parts of history we just soon forget about, but you can't. It was there, it was done, so, you know, that's the way it is.
The Friends of Historic Boonville own both the old Cooper County Jail, which received no damage, as well as the barn. Bozarth tells me they're still waiting to see what happens with insurance and donations, but as of right now, the future of this historic place is still up in the air. Live in Boonville, Delaney Tarpley, KOMU 8 News. Evie, advocates realize stopping the bills is going to take a lot of work. Tonight, they got started by calling hundreds of supporters.
At this point, it's a call for help.
We're just taking giant steps backward.
Volunteers from Promo, Missouri and the Center Project are not only trying to stop the passage of transgender legislation, but also support each other on an emotional day.
I cried like 4 times just, hearing everything.
Earlier today, the Missouri Senate passed 2 bills.
I mean, the last few years, I think it's just been building up to this, so it's not a surprise.
One would limit transgender athletes from playing on their gender's sports teams. The other limits transgender youth from receiving gender-affirming health care.
For anyone that's a parent, you just look at your own child and just imagine someone telling you that you wouldn't be able to get the care you need for your kid.
Now these bills will go on to the House for consideration.
If the positions that we are taking are so extreme, my assumption is we wouldn't be maintaining those majorities at the level we are.
Regardless, these advocates say they won't give up.
Even if this goes the way that we don't want it to, that we're going to then be talking to healthcare professionals and talking to families and figuring out how can we still take care of everyone, even if the government won't.
For now, they've been reaching out to supporters, asking them to contact their legislators, hoping their message is heard.
I just want them to remember that they're children, it's a child. You're not allowing them to just be a child, just be who they are.
Dozens of volunteers showed up to tonight's event. Many told me they had personal connections to the issue. In the studio, Delaney Tarpley, KOMU 8 News.
For server Anna Bess, the dollars have been stacking up.
Recently, on average, it's been higher tipping for sure.
She says the average percentages customers give are getting higher.
I usually see between 20 to 30 usually. In pre-COVID, it was probably 18 to 20.
National data says from 2021 to 2022, tipping increased 16%. Some customers say it's societal pressure.
I've tipped 15 or 20% and somebody looking over my shoulder and told me that's not enough.
It's not ever vocalized, it's just kind of like a internal they didn't tip 20%, well, maybe you shouldn't go out then.
Now, new technology is asking people to give more and not just tipping servers.
Usually tipping used to be just at restaurants, and so now you might go to Starbucks and they have a little tip thing.
Where they turn it around and it's like, do you want a tip? And then they can watch you click. So it definitely is more pressure now.
And with technological advancements, these changes could be just the tip of the iceberg.
Technology is getting smarter. It used to be that a terminal would ask you, do you want to give a 10, 15, or 20% tip? Now 10% isn't an option anymore.
Especially on lower cost items.
It'll say, do you want to give a $1, $2, or $3 tip? And so before you know it, you've given a 50% tip and you don't even realize it.
Some customers aren't buying it.
I don't really ever feel pressured to tip here just because somebody's not waiting on you, if you know what I mean.
But then others feel the need to pick up the slack.
But also I'll see people not do it, and it's like, okay, well, I'll tip because they didn't.
Hairstylist Ryan Morosic says it's pretty standard to tip at her salon. But since COVID, she's also seen a rise.
Us as a society have become more gracious. Any service provider has really, the value on that person has jumped up.
For Bess, the increased tips,
especially being on this end of it, I know that extra dollar goes a long way,
are an opportunity to pay it forward.
If I can help them out a little bit, even this extra dollar or something, it'll make their day.
Delaney Tarpley, KOMU 8 News, Columbia.